a lot to CFA and IIT Madras too to bring me here. And good morning all of you. Just to briefly tell you, I represent the organization called Legal Initiative for Forest and Environment. It's an environmental law firm. We do track different governance issues, compliance issues with respect to various environmental regulations that the country at present is dealing with. So I will go directly to my presentations. So if we go with the evolution of ESG, because I was given the topic prospects of ESG from a governance perspective. So just to tell from the beginning, when United Nations Global Compact and Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs first introduced the term ESG. So there the idea was basically to capture the value created or destroyed by the companies. So what analysts mentioned that better incorporate environmental, social and governance factors into their research mechanism. If we look at the IFC definition, what IFC said, a set of environmental, social and governance factors considered by companies when managing their operations and investors when making their investments in respect of the risks, impacts and opportunities relating to but not limited to environmental issues, social issues and governance aspects. So what are these issues, these three issues that E, S and G? If we look at that way, it will give, if we look at that definitions of ESG, what according to IFC is that environmental issues, potential or actual changes to the physical or natural environment, social issues, potential or actual changes on surrounding community and workers, and governance issue. Here the governance issue is very interesting. It talks about corporate governance, not just the governance of existing rules and regulations, but also about the corporate governance structure. So basically, impact on planet and concerns of community are supposed to be assessed as part of the ESG concerns to be addressed. So basically what IFC itself mentioned that ESG can become a good proxy for assessing how companies identify non-financial risks and opportunities and whether they are developing appropriate strategies to manage such ESG risks. So if I go one by one, in terms of environmental issues, we want to talk about environmental issues and what are the changes or potential or actual changes to the physical or natural environment. So where we are in terms of impacts that we were supposed to assess. We had in our country, many of you are aware of, those who don't know, we have had environmental impact assessment notifications. Way before in 1994, way really before when ESG terms were not even coined up. So from that time onwards, it was the approach based on the precautionary principle that what are the likely impacts, what are the likely risks associated with a particular operations or an activities should be assessed well in advance and accordingly mitigation measures can be proposed. But till date, EIA itself remain an ineffective tools if we look at in that way, because almost 85 to 95% projects does not even require impact assessment to be carried out. We have had that in the practice. We were given 39 type of projects which needed to carry out impact assessment, but among that also some threshold limits were given to them. That, for example, building construction projects below 20,000 square meter of built up area, they don't need to carry out any impact assessment in sense. Automobile manufacturing units, one of the most resource intensive units and polluting units at the same place, but they don't even come under the ambit of impact assessment. They don't need to do any prior impact assessment study. Textile manufacturing unit, water and energy guzzler in a word if you call it. But they also don't need to go through impact assessment proceedings. So for example, if synthetic fiber manufacturing is needed, there they will be going for the impact assessment, but after fiber to yarn to textile, clothing, none of them comes under the purview of the impact assessment study, impact assessment requirement. But all these processes are really intensive in terms of water resources, water utilizations, energy utilizations. Metro rail projects. Till date, we don't need to carry out any kind of impact assessment before coming out with the metro rail projects in any particular city or anywhere in India. So the consequence, this is the situations what happened in 2019 when we started again in Kolkata the next level of metro rail underground tunnel constructions. So with the point is, with due respect to all scientists, all engineers sitting in the room and outside, the issue of just doing a geological study to check that there will be underground tunnel construction provisions will not really suffice the requirement of the impact or risk assessment. If there was a scope for metro rail projects to come or go through the impact assessment, then there could have been a scope for doing a carrying capacity study. Those who don't know, I would like to mention this particular stretch in Kolkata, the tunnel construction phase. It is very near to the first phase of metro rail of Kolkata, which already had the underground railway networks only. But then also the new phase couldn't really support the underground tunnel constructions and underground alignment of the metro rails. And the reason this happened, if there could have been an impact assessment study, that as part of that a carrying capacity study could have been identified, could have been conducted. A social assessment study could have been done. People residing there, how much resettlement, how much relocation could have been required for those peoples would have been a part of this study if it was into the purview of impact assessment study. Let's look at the solar power plant. We have already had a discussions yesterday already that there is no requirement for the impact assessment on solar power plant. So the idea, a new solar unit at Ghoramara Island of Sundarbans. So the point is, Ghoramara is one of the fastest shrinking and sinking island of Sundarban. So just for the sake of adding solar power capacity, just for the sake of meeting our RE commitment, we are bringing this kind of projects to such area. We are putting, if even for a second, if we are removing the environment and the community part, such amount of finance at the risk of getting sinking down with the island itself. So the point is, the experts who is really part of these metro rail projects, he himself has mentioned that it is technically difficult to take conventional power to Ghoramara considering the unstable and quickly eroding nature. In spite of stating such kind of comments, he himself is suggesting to bring a new entire project of 250 kilowatt in the Ghoramara Island. So are we really looking at the risk or assessing the environmental stability of a particular area when we are talking about the existing system which is already there to deal with the environmental and social risks? So let's look at the social issues. Potential or actual changes on surrounding community and workers. The same EIA notification gives the provisions to address concerns of the local affected persons, which is called public consultations. As part of the impact assessment study, a detailed study of people existing there, their social impact, what can be the livelihood, how much displacement is going to happen, everything, every provision is there. But again, on the public hearing concept also, either many of the projects are actually exempted from the public hearing, like building construction projects, expansion of roads and highways. In case of mining project, up to 40% capacity expansions without involving any new mining lease area. You don't need to carry out any kind of public consultations. You don't need to do any such concerns addressal for the public. Linear projects within the industrial estates, these are not even required the addressal of publics living nearby or getting impacted from such kind of projects or its expansions. And those projects which are actually have granted EC, most of the time it was found that their public hearings was a faulty public hearings. So for example, just giving an instruction to the outside laborers or workers who are coming to work in a particular area that they should not mingle with Champagnes doesn't really address the social issues that is going to impact. I purposely gave this example because this is the latest EIA report that we studied for the Nicobar Islands Integrated Development Project. This was the exact line that was written in this report. That people coming to work there, going to reside there, or coming as a laborer for the entire construction phase, they will be told, they will be directed that they should not go near to the Shompenis, one of the most dominant habitat communities and the indigenous tribal communities of the Nicobar Islands. So this is not even the idea if we go what IFC definition of social risk talks about. Let us look at the governance sector. I mentioned that this governance is having a very interesting component, corporate governance. So we must think that this could be a positive thing, that governance, board structure, diversity, their ethical conduct, risk management attitude, everything will be there in the corporate governance in the name of risk assessment and stuff. I would like to share two examples. One is of Pahwa Plastics Private Limited. This unit was manufacturing synthetic organic chemicals in Haryana in one of their unit, and the kind of chemicals they were manufacturing was formaldehyde. Ideally, they are supposed to carry out impact assessment and public hearing too. They didn't do none of this, and they went for the post facto environmental clearance process. So we took it to the NGT. NGT held that yes, they were supposed to conduct the impact assessment and the public hearing process entirely, and they were required to obtain environmental clearance. But this company, Pahwa Plastics, they challenged the NGT order and they took it to Supreme Court. So this is one incident when they mentioned that it was thought that the EC was not required for this unit. We were bona fide under the impression that they were not required to obtain any EC, stating this was their own main contentions of these Pahwa Plastics. I'd like to give another examples of Electro Steels Limited. They came up with an unit, manufacturing unit, steel plant, in a place which is almost 5 to 7 kilometers away from where they have got the environmental clearance. So the idea of impact assessment is basically site specific. That what is the ecosystem services, what are the biological diversity, everything needs to assess as part of the risk assessment or as part of the impact assessment proceedings. So anyone shifting their locations, they are supposed to conduct a fresh impact assessment study and supposed to take a fresh EC for the entire process. But none of them did that, and they finally, when challenged it, took it their contention to Supreme Court. Supreme Court came out with this judgment. The manufacturing units of the appellant appoint about 8,000 employees and have a huge annual turnover. An establishment contributing to the economy of the country and providing livelihood ought not to be closed down only on the ground of technical irregularity of not obtaining environmental clearance. So, and ex post facto clearance will not be a practice but will be granted in exceptional circumstances. So these were the stand of Supreme Court. So why I tried to give the examples of these two, that even if corporate governance could have been a little bit of inclined to come out with a prior risk assessment or impact assessment to address the maximum opportunity or optimize the maximum scope from it, then they should have not gone for the Supreme Court first of all to make their illegal actions a legal thing. And Supreme Court also in such situations would not have come up with such kind of orders stating in the name of economy or employment. So as long as corporate governance is also not really inclined to such kind of requirement, indeed this kind of statements even from the top court will be coming in, and these ex post facto clearances will be justified in the name of these exceptional circumstances. And none of us, not even in the room or outside, will get to know what are those exceptional circumstances. What are the definitions of those exceptional circumstances? It changes from time to time as and when they are required. So same judgment. So in such a situations, when SEBI came up with just a reporting requirement, what SEBI did, SEBI in May 2021 came out with a mandatory reporting requirement that all the first 1,000 top listed companies will now have to mandatorily report their activities or initiatives taken by them on environmental, social and governance perspective. Earlier they used to call it business responsibility report. Now they have added one word, business responsibility and sustainability report, BRSR. So it is nothing but just a publicity, public image creations or things like that which is not even happening actually on the ground.
5 minutes.
Yeah, this is my last slide. So some of the actions could have been addressed or could have been really thought for instead of just ensuring or just stating that reporting requirement. What about post-environment clearance monitoring? Impact assessment is there, but we have found enough cases, enough evidences from the ground when the communities approached us that there is not even a single compliance of the single EC conditions. So idea is when the ECs are granted based on the impact assessment study, they are given certain conditions to be followed. But then there is, other than a half-yearly compliance report submissions, there is really no ground checks and balance, ground level monitoring in place. So why not making something more stringent on that aspects? That maybe down the line of 5 years or so, a post-impact assessment, something in that line. Why not a separate, a different, a fresh impact assessment that what was there before the project came in and after the project came and became operational, how the situation has changed or what kind of modifications, what kind of damages or betterment has actually really happened which was told before in advance. Some inclusions of these activities which are very necessary at this point of the time, that this should actually come under the purview of impact assessment notification just to address these risks, these opportunities in a right and timely manner. What about SEBI? If SEBI at all is interested in making ESG an important parameter or making ESG an important aspects, why not they are making it a criteria to even list the companies? That those who are actually doing something, those who are actually mitigating, assessing the risk, then only they can be listed. Maybe it's too ambitious to think about, but yes, this is where the governance gaps are still remaining. So I will end up here only. So this is just the idea to float that where we are.
Thank you.